Having spent several hours on the Norfolk Broads and failing to catch a perch using the drop shot method, I decided to make a couple of big changes, which was to invest in some new lures and also switch to micro jigging. I've used various Fox branded fishing tackle over the years, and I've always been impressed with it. Fox branded fishing tackle isn't the cheapest out there. In fact, it is damn expensive and probably a little overpriced for what you get, but then it is top quality stuff that is strong, well made and built to last. Well, this was my experience and opinion of Fox branded fishing tackle up until very recently. I ended up choosing to invest in the Fox Rage micro lures and naturally thought the Fox Rage micro jig heads would be the best buy. As the Fox Rage micro jig heads were designed specifically for the Fox micro lures, I thought the two would be a marriage made in heaven. The Fox micro jig heads are the perfect size for the Fox micro lures, as expected. However, the quality of the hooks used on the micro jig heads is utter rubbish. The wire is thin, weak and not up to the job. I use a real life example that shows how I reached this conclusion. During a recent perch fishing session on the River Bure at Wroxham, I was bouncing a Fox micro fry lure on the Fox Rage 2-gram micro jig head. There is a little weed and the odd small submerged foliage in this stretch of the River Bure. However, on the whole the bottom is pretty clean and snag free, and you can get away with very light tackle. Whilst bouncing the lure along the bottom, I encountered one of the small patches of weed, which wasn't very thick, and pulled the jig head through. As I would have expected, there was a little resistance as the jig went into the weed, and I did have to apply a small amount of pressure to get it through. However, I didn't have to give it a big heave-ho. The jig seemed to come through the weed without too much trouble, and I thought everything was okay. I carried on fishing the area, and during those casts the jig came home with no problems at all. I assume I had missed the weed beds and any rubbish on the riverbed. After 3 or 4 casts I just so happened to inspect the jig head, and this is what I found. Yep, the damn hook had straightened right out, and the only thing that could have done it was the tiny patch of weed I had to pull the jig through a few casts earlier. I thought this was a one-off, and I'd just managed to get a dodgy jig head that slipped through the quality control net. I tied another jig head on the trace, baited it with a different Fox micro lure, and started bouncing it off the riverbed once more. After a few casts, I managed to find some more crud on the riverbed and once again had to apply a little pressure to pull the jig through it. The additional pressure I had to apply was minimal and there should have been no need to be concerned, but because of what happened to my previous jig, I decided to inspect this jig head too. Once again, the hook had straightened out and was totally useless. One straightened hook could just be poor quality control, but 2 straightened hooks? This smacks of poor quality to me and there are no excuses for this. The Fox Rage jig heads aren't cheap, and at £4.25 for 5 or 85 pence a piece, those 2 casts ended up costing me £1.70p. This may not seem like much, but here's a question I have to ask. How many casts do you make during an average jigging session? How much could one jigging session using these micro jigs end up costing? It's not all about the money and the cost, although this is a big factor. It's also about the fish too. The way my Fox jig heads failed has made me seriously question the size of fish these jig heads can deal with before straightening out. Losing fish is painful, and when it is because a bit of equipment fails and not due to error on my part, very frustrating. If I lost a perch of a lifetime because of an inferior Fox jig head, I doubt I would buy any Fox product ever again.